Welcome to Crimepedia. I am your host this week. My name is Morgan. I hope you are having a wonderful day. And joining me, as always, after a little bit of a break, little Easter break for us, is my wonderful true crime co-host, my true crime BFF. It is the lovely Cherry. Hello, Cherry. How are you?
Hello. Hope you guys all had a lovely Easter. Yes, I'm very well, thank you. It's nice to be back and doing our show again. It's been a bit up in the air recently, so it's lovely to have you all here and hope you're going to enjoy this week's show. We're going to give you some details of places that we're going to be this year. So we've got some good events that we're going to be going to, including CrimeCon UK. So at the end of this week's show, we'll give you all of the information that you need to know to get yourself there this year. So listen out for that.
Very good. So how about we get on to this week's episode?
Let's go.
In September 2011, a shooting occurred in South Philadelphia, and two suspects were implicated based on eyewitness identification. There would be inconsistencies in the eyewitness testimonies, and both suspects had alibis. Despite this, both would be charged and placed on trial for the shooting. What followed was a travesty of justice, where the suspects would face the potential of serving decades behind bars. This is Crimepedia, and this is a mishandling of justice. All right, Cherry, so at around 9:30 p.m. on September 25th, 2011, Latrice Johnson saw two people walking down Ferdinand Street towards South 18th in the Point Breeze neighborhood of South Philadelphia. Even though it was warm, both had on hoodies and long pants, with their hoods pulled tight. Latrice was on her parents' front steps waiting for food delivery with her 17-year-old son, Khalif Ladson, who was holding her 6-year-old niece, Deneen Thomas. Three of Latrice's other children were nearby. Across the street, Latrice's 23-year-old stepdaughter, Latoya Lane, was watching two of her children and two cousins playing basketball. Suddenly, the two hooded people on the other side of the street pulled out guns and started shooting. Johnson would shield the children with her bodies as bullets hit the... Let me say that again. Johnson shielded the children with her body as bullets hit the house. At least 12 shots were fired before the attackers ran away, as both Latrice and Latoya remembered. Latrice found her niece with a gunshot wound in her leg. At 9:36 p.m., someone called 911, and police officers arrived quickly. By then, Latrice found out that not only did Deneen, but also Khalif and Latoya had been shot.
Oh, no.
Officer Charles Forrest rushed Deneen and Latrice to Children's Hospital in his squad car. During the ride, Forrest asked Latrice if she could recognize the shooters. Johnson repeated that she told what she told the dispatcher, not identifying the attackers. At the hospital, Johnson also found out that she had been hurt. Shrapnel had cut her lower body. Forrest would then take her to the nearby hospital of the University of Pennsylvania. There he asked again if she could identify the shooters. Johnson said she couldn't, only giving a description of one black male in a gray hoodie and the other in a black hoodie, both wearing black sweatpants. So, not a great description at all.
No.
Now, Khalif Ladson and Latoya Lane were also taken to a hospital. Later that evening, police officer Lynn Zarelli visited them. Zarelli would later testify, saying that she had asked about the shooters. Ladson said he saw 2 to 3 black males in dark hoodies, while Lane said she saw 2 to 3 black males, but neither could positively identify them. All right. So this is going to be very important later in our
Yeah.
story. Now, overnight, the investigation would change. According to police reports, a confidential informant implicated a teenager named Charles C.J. Rice. By that evening, both Johnson and Lane changed their stories. One said she saw CJ at the scene, while the other said she saw his friend, Tyler Linder. Okay? Now, this is important because Johnson knew CJ Rice and Lane knew Tyler Linder. So once it
they're
came
known to
out that
them. Yeah, they know them.
they are known to them. Yes, that's correct. Now, on September 26th, this is the day after, following this tip, police would search their shooting database for CJs and their victim names. They found records showing that CJ and Tyler Linder had been shot a few weeks earlier while riding bikes. The database also suggested that CJ was associated with a gang, the 7th Street Gang, while Ladson was linked to the rival 5th Street Gang. So we've had a few stories about gang violence,
Yeah, we
and
have.
this seems to be once again unnecessary gang violence. It sounds like this could be a tit for tat type thing. It could be okay. Well, one group shoots another group, then the other group's going to go back and shoot at them. So Khalif Ladson was also a suspect in this shooting that happened on September 6th. Okay. Now, police started investigating the attack as part of a gang conflict, speculating that Khalif might have been the intended target, with Latrice, Latoya, and Deneen getting caught in the gunfire, right? That seems like it always happens, right? So you're going after one person, then you have unnecessary, well, everyone's a victim in this, but you have people that have absolutely nothing to do with it who end up getting involved and getting shot at and getting hurt. Now, detectives would make photo arrays with CJ and Tyler Linder's pictures included. However, at this time, it was 3 years before the Philadelphia Police Department started using what's called the double blind method to ensure that the officers conducting the lineups didn't know the suspect's identity, right? So the investigators, the detectives who put together these photo arrays and who were going to present them to the victims, they knew who the suspects were. Okay.
Right.
So I think obviously that's probably a huge issue because they can obviously kind of point people
Coerce them.
in the direction they want them to go, right?
Mm.
So on the same day, this is the day after the shooting, detectives would talk to both Latoya Lane and then Latrice Johnson. Now, without any guns recovered and lacking any physical evidence connecting anyone to the crime, eyewitness identification would be crucial in any court case. Now, even though Lane and Johnson had previously said they couldn't identify the shooter, their response during the hospital interviews changed. Okay, both Latrice and Latoya would be shown the photo arrays prior to officially being interviewed, and by that, what I mean is they were shown the photos before anything was recorded. So the detectives were talking to them, and they were showing their photos before they went and started interviewing and said, "Hey, do you recognize any of these people?"
Right.
So it's so we're not sure exactly what was said during this initial phase before the interview started, but obviously that's going to call into question what's happening here. Now, detectives would start with Latoya Lane, who was still in the hospital. While there aren't any detailed notes about the initial conversation, Latoya did talk about hearing gunshots and seeing Tyler holding what looked like a gun. Now, what's interesting is that neither Lane nor the detectives actually mentioned Tyler Linder's last name, suggesting that they had talked about it before, right? So she's saying, I saw Tyler holding what looked to be a gun. So if they hadn't mentioned the name before, she would have been more, there would have been clarification. Who's Tyler? What's Tyler's name? She would have said Tyler Linder, right? But instead, they used it used it just Tyler, as in, so they both know exactly who she's talking about. So obviously, there had to have been some talk about Tyler before they actually started the interview.
Yeah.
Now, Lane recognized Linder because her cousin knew who it was. Okay, so her cousin knew who Tyler Linder was,
Okay.
and so she was able to identify them, but she wasn't able to identify the other person. She just said she saw another person in a dark hoodie across the street, and that she could not see his face. Okay, detective then would show Lane a photo array, and she was able to easily pick out Tyler Linder, circling his picture and then signing her name. Now, 3 hours later, detectives would then talk to Latrice Johnson, who had been discharged from the hospital, but would come back to see Lane. Now, before the detectives arrived, Lane had told Johnson about mentioning Linder's name. So there was already this conversation between the two of them, like, "Hey, I told him I saw Tyler Linder, so that's what I know." Okay. During the interview, Johnson would then change her story, very similar to Lane's. While the police notes said that Johnson was shown a photo array beforehand, the process wasn't explained. So they didn't mention, like, what was involved with them with showing her the pictures. What did they talk about? Was there any discussion about suspects or if there was anyone that she knew in there? But once it got to the official interview part, Johnson would circle and sign a picture of CJ Rice, who she knew from her son's school and also from Facebook. So they were actually Facebook friends. CJ actually went to school with Khalif and knew each other. Okay. So if you have a friend that's a Facebook friend and your son knows someone, goes to school with someone, you should be able to easily identify them almost right. So you have a situation where when she's first asked about it, she doesn't know who it was, couldn't see any faces, couldn't recognize them. But then the next day, she's getting interviewed, she's showing these pictures, and she's saying, yeah, it was CJ Rice.
Yeah, that's a bit suspicious, isn't it?
It is very suspicious. Now, the specific question that was made that led her to choose CJ isn't written down. So we don't know exactly what was said during this time. Johnson would describe seeing two people approaching and said she then saw CJ shooting towards them. Okay. So let's go over these two stories. So story one is, I saw Tyler Linder with a gun shooting. Someone else, I couldn't see their face. Didn't recognize them, right? Couldn't see who it was. Then you have another person saying, I saw two people approaching. I could see one of them who was CJ Rice. I didn't know who the other person was. I don't know if she said she didn't know who the other person was or she couldn't recognize the other person, but she saw CJ shooting towards them. So now you have two people. One person saw one person. The other person saw the other person. One person saw one person shooting. The other person saw the other person shooting. So doesn't seem very.
Together,
It's
no,
not.
together that kind of
It's
makes it
not.
up. No, that's right.
It's no. It's like, if at that point I would kind of question, like, what, where are we at? There's not enough evidence, right? You
But then
have conflicting information.
we know that there was two men there, so it is quite possible if
We
both
know
of
there's two
them were
men,
shooting, one could have seen one person shooting, the other one could have seen the other person
right?
shooting. So it could be if they were both
Hmm.
shooting, that is quite possible that they could have seen
It is,
recognized a different person shooting in that case. So it's possible that
yeah.
that was how it was, but it sounds a bit like they didn't know who it was and then they do, and then,
No, no, I agree with you, but it,
Mm,
from a standpoint of, this is something that at some point you're gonna want to take to court.
mm.
It's not tidy. It's not as tidy as you want it to be, right?
No, it's
Because
not tight.
any good defense attorney would be able to, you know, look at this and tear it apart, right? So bring in
Yeah.
reasonable doubt. How can you say that you saw this one person, but this other person said, I couldn't see him because the hood was pulled on tight and I couldn't see their face. So how can you
Mm,
be absolutely sure that this is that person when this other person is saying I couldn't see their face? So it,
mm.
obviously, I mean, a lot of issues already with this investigation.
Mm.
But I can understand why the police would focus on these two. You know, they had been involved in a shooting just weeks
Mm.
before. And when CJ actually went to police to give his statement, the police detective actually told him, "Hey, if anything happens to Khalif, we know it's going to be you," basically,
Mm.
in a
Mm.
nutshell. So it's like, if anything happens to him, we're coming after you. And then,
Yeah.
a few weeks
Something
later, something
happens.
does happen to Khalif. So obviously they're going to go,
Mm.
the first people they're going to think of is,
Yeah, of course.
CJ was just shot and Khalif is
Mm.
the suspect, and this could happen. What's crazy about this is I don't think that CJ had any idea. No one knew who had shot him in
Right.
Tyler until that moment when he stepped in the police station to give his statement. And there was police who told CJ, "Yeah, if anything happens to Khalif, that, well, obviously you're going to tip him off. Now he knows. Okay, well, you think Khalif's involved." So it's absolutely insane to me that
Mm.
they would release that information to him, to a victim, right? If you think
Yeah, I'm
someone
very surprised
committed a
that they
crime,
did.
you wouldn't do that. So it
No.
was a mishandling of information,
Mm.
and a mishandling of that actual investigation.
Yeah.
Now, despite these conflicts between these two statements, these two eyewitnesses pointing their fingers at CJ and Tyler was enough for police to get the warrants to arrest CJ and Tyler,
Mm.
thinking that these two had worked together in the shooting that occurred on September 25th. There's one big problem with all of this, okay? CJ was still healing from getting shot on September 3rd, okay? Now, on that
Oh.
day, so we're going to go back to September 3rd. On that day, CJ and Tyler Linder were at a friend's house playing cards. After they were done, they got up, got on their bikes, and they were riding home. And as they were riding home on their bike, the car came up and shots were fired. Now, CJ got badly hurt, needing surgery to get a bullet out and staying for an extended period of time at the hospital. Now, after leaving, he would end up staying with family on the west side of Philadelphia, which was, not in the area where he had been shot, in the area that he lived. So he was out of
Mm.
the South Philadelphia area. He was out in West Philadelphia,
Mm.
and he shouldn't have been in the area at that time. After the surgery and after being released from hospital, CJ had lots of pain and trouble with moving. And this was made clear at multiple checkups. So
Right.
I
So
think it was,
it's documented that this guy is having issues with his movement, and it's documented by professionals that this guy is struggling generally. Is he going to be able to be running
yeah.
around shooting people?
Now, 5 days before the shooting on the 25th, so
Mm.
CJ actually had an appointment with his pediatrician, who he had been seeing since he was a toddler, right? So he'd been seeing for years. Um, this pediatrician made notes that Tyler had extreme issues with mobility. He had a hard time getting up on the examination table. He was wincing in pain. And he said that when he left, he was hunched over and walking in very small steps like an old man.
Mm.
So this is a person who has very limited mobility,
Mm.
and I don't see being able to run, as the witnesses said, 5 days, just 5 days later, right?
Yeah. And I mean, you could understand if he was just like, if it was just a few days before. But I mean, if he's been seeing this pediatrician the whole time, regularly, since he
Hmm.
was shot up until that point, then the chances of him just faking it are unlikely. He's not going to fake it for weeks, just so that he's going to be
No,
free to go and shoot someone.
no. I mean,
No. So that doesn't
he's
make,
not doing
yeah,
this
it doesn't make
he's not doing
sense.
this for alibi.
No.
He's not going
No.
like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna go and I'm gonna pretend like I'm really hurt and
Yeah.
I'm, I can't move and I'm in
Yeah.
pain.
It's too
And
far-fetched
then
for
when I
that.
go and I shoot
Yeah.
someone,
That's right.
they're gonna be like, oh, it couldn't have been CJ because he was in bad shape.
Yeah, no.
No one's thinking that way, right?
No,
This
it's
isn't
too
a this
far
isn't a
too
movie.
far-fetched.
He's not
No.
he's not a criminal mastermind. He's going
No.
in my head. If that were me, and if it was like, if I'm going to shoot someone, I'm going to shoot someone. I'm not going to make up some elaborate story and like go weeks on
Exactly.
end, like creating this alibi or this, this situation where people are gonna be like, oh, there's no way that Morgan could have shot somebody. No, I'm going to shoot somebody. I'm not going to shoot
That's
anybody.
right.
But I'm just saying, I'm not gonna make this elaborate,
It's too
plan.
far. Yeah, it's too far-fetched for that, I think.
It is. Now, but even with all that, right? Even the fact that he was hurt and how badly he was hurt, he was still being blamed for the shooting based on what one witness said.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all there is. One witness pointed their finger at C.J. Rice and said, "I saw him shooting," and so police decided that was enough. This is what we're going with. On September 27th, CJ's mom found out that he was wanted for attempted murder. Now, she would call Dina Duncan, okay, who is her aunt. This is who CJ was staying with in West Philadelphia, to let her know, like, hey, he's wanted for attempted murder. She would then take CJ to the police station in South Philadelphia, where his mom would meet them. Now, CJ went into the building very carefully because, once again, he was in severe pain and wasn't able to move. Now, outside, his mom got in touch with Sandjai Weaver, a woman who she used to work with and who was now a lawyer. She told CJ not to say anything without her there. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
It seemed for them, it was pretty straightforward. This is what we're going to do. We're going to tell the police what happened, where I was, what happened that day, right? So CJ had been with Duncan's son, Quadifi, on September 25th, watching a movie at home. When the shooting happened, CJ was at home with Deanna's dad and her 7-year-old son. Now, Duncan made sure to mention how hurt CJ was to the police from the earlier shooting, stating that he needed care every day and that he was not able to move very much. So he had to have his wounds drained and bandaged every day, right?
Right.
So he
Right.
he was watched constantly.
Mm.
He was constantly being watched. He was being taken care of. He was
Yeah.
recuperating, right?
Yeah.
So obviously they think, well, yeah, this is what he was doing. He wasn't out. He wasn't in South Philadelphia. He wasn't shooting. He definitely wasn't running anywhere. This is
No.
where he was. Now,
So
Tyler Linder
weird.
also had an alibi. Tyler Linder's alibi actually was supported by video evidence, and
Okay.
actually, I mean, it helped that he had a very good lawyer, right? So on the night of the shooting, Tyler Linder was actually helping his mom cleaning a building in Northeast Philadelphia till at least 10 o'clock, as shown by security
Okay.
footage. Okay,
Right.
so you remember the shooting in South Philadelphia occurred around 9:30.
Mm.
Videos show that him and his mom were cleaning in North Philadelphia, the opposite side of the city, until at
Okay.
least half hour after the shooting. Okay.
So there you go.
Now, the Linder family would hire a different lawyer. His name was Raymond Driscoll. And after getting bail for Tyler Linder, they started setting up alibi interviews with the police and the district attorney's office. So they
Okay.
wanted to get in front of this. They wanted to talk to police. They wanted to talk to DA's office. Like, hey, here's his alibi. He couldn't have done
Yeah.
it. He wasn't involved.
Video evidence.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately for CJ, his mom couldn't afford his bail, so he would end up staying locked up until his trial.
Oh God.
Now, this is where things start to get like really crazy, okay? In December, after more than 2 months in jail, CJ would finally meet with his lawyer, Sandjai Weaver, okay? This was just
Right.
before his preliminary hearing. So he hadn't
Okay.
met with her at all. So from the
At
time
all.
from that time on the September 27th when they made the phone call say, "Hey, we need your help. CJ's being arrested.
Yeah.
Don't talk to the police unless I'm there." Okay? The first time he
Wow.
actually met with her, saw her in person, was in December.
That's crazy.
It's
Surely
absolutely crazy.
isn't there stuff against that? Surely that's not in his best interest that he's only met with her
It,
so late.
it's not, but I don't you got to remember too, he was young, right? He was a
Yeah.
teenager. I don't know if he knew any better. I
Right.
think
Yeah, of
he
course.
just kind of was like, okay, well, she's doing what she needs to do, and
Yeah, yeah.
when she talks to me or when she's going to meet with me, then she will. Until
Well, you
then, I
kind of
just
put
got to
your
sit and I
trust
got
in
to
stuff
wait.
like that, don't you? You put your trust in things
Yeah,
like that. That's the thing. You don't know any better, so you do put your trust in the legal system to, because if you're innocent, you kind of like you're like, well, they're going to show that I'm innocent because I didn't do it. So
right.
that's when, you kind of trust it,
You're
especially
putting,
if you're a
yeah,
kid.
you're
Mm,
putting your trust into a person. A lot of times, it's a
mm,
person that you don't know, you don't know anything
that's
about.
right. That's right.
You're putting trust in this person who that they are going to work in your best
Yeah,
interest, right?
that's
So that's what
exactly.
you have to think. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
they're working in my best interest, and so I'm going to let the process, you know,
Yeah, because I'm
go
innocent.
forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the process is going to work in my favor because I'm innocent.
Yeah, of
There's
course.
no reason to be worried about it.
No.
Now, eager to help with his own defense, CJ would ask Weaver for copies of important legal documents.
Mhm.
So he asked for all the discovery file, which is required. So that so when a defense attorney asks for discovery, the
Mhm.
prosecutor has to give them all their files, right? So he
Yep.
wanted that for his own purposes. He
Mhm.
also asked Weaver to get his Cricket wireless phone records to prove his alibi.
Right.
So
Good idea.
he believed, oh, like, okay, I was home, my cell phone was home. These phone records are going to show that I didn't go
Where
anywhere,
I
that
was. Yeah.
I was where I was, right?
Mhm.
Now, Sanjay Weaver promised to do both. But during the 14 months between the preliminary hearing and when his trial started, Weaver only met with CJ twice,
Oh
each time at the
no.
Philadelphia Industrial Correctional Center, and each meeting lasting no more than 15 minutes.
Oh no.
So, this is a lawyer who is
Yeah.
going to trial on for you for attempted murder.
And she spent a
And let's be
maximum of
honest,
half an hour with you.
yeah, there's no way she knows anything about you. There's no way
No.
that she's going to get your full side of the story.
Mm.
And it's almost like I feel like at this point, like she only has like one foot in the door for this kid,
Mm.
right? She's like, okay, yeah, I'll take the case and I'll help you out, but she's not fully committed to it. Like CJ would also he tried calling Sanjay Weaver many times, but only managed to talk to her about 3 times, and each of those were about 15 minutes each as well. So we're talking what, between meeting in person and meeting talking on the phone,
Mm.
5 times in
Mm.
14 months. You talking to your lawyer 5 times in
How can
14 months.
How can she do her job properly though? And I know I'm guessing she's a public defender, so I'm guessing that her caseload is ridiculous. How on earth is she expected to pull together a case when she's only able to speak to her client in such a small, such a small amount of times? How do you build up a case like
Mm-hmm.
that? I mean, because I know I
You
recently read a
can't.
book. I recently read a book called The Secret Barrister, and it gives you like a behind the scenes understanding of what the British legal system is like, caseloads and stuff like that. And it's really eye-opening, because if you are in the fortunate position where you would never need to be represented in court for anything, then that's brilliant. But for a lot of people, and that could be including yourself or myself, there could be a time where you're called into court, and we don't have a general public do not have a good enough understanding of the British legal system. And I'm sure it's the same in America, in that the public defense system, we don't have enough knowledge about it, and we should, because one day that could be us standing in that dock, and every single person that stood in that dock wants and deserves the best representation they can get. And unfortunately, a lot of that comes down to money. If you can hire the best lawyers, you've got more chance of getting yourself out of prison. If you haven't, and you're relying on a public defender that's got 14 cases a day to deal with, how on earth how are they gonna be able to represent you the best they can when they don't have the time? And it sounds like this is exactly what's happened in this case. She's just got loads on, and she's doing as much as she can. She's only human. She's doing as much as she can, but this is not giving this boy the best representation or even a representation that he deserves, really. It's not giving him an adequate representation.
I am very glad that you brought that up. All right. So let's quickly talk about Sandjai Weaver and what was going on at this very time. All right. So this at the time that CJ was arrested, the shooting occurred, and him being in jail. So, like I said, his mother couldn't afford to post his bail, so he stayed in, right? So also she was concerned that she wouldn't be able to pay Sandjai Weaver, because she wasn't actually she wasn't court appointed. She wasn't a public defender. But in December, so before she actually went and met with CJ, she did get she was granted formal court appointment status to represent CJ, which would then allow her to be compensated with public funds. Okay.
Right.
Now, in 2011, at the time, court appointed lawyers would receive flat fees. They would receive $200 for preparation if a case went to trial, and $1,333 if it didn't. Okay. For each day after each day after the first day of trial, these court-appointed lawyers would receive $400 a day if they spent more than 3 hours in the courtroom, and $200 if they spent fewer. Okay, so she's not billing per hour. She just knows, okay, this is how much I'm going to get. This is what I'm going to get if it goes to trial. If it doesn't, this is what I'm going to get. So for her, at this time, it was probably best that the case went to trial and that it would go on for a few days. The reason why is because in March 2011, Sandjai Weaver filed for Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Okay.
Oh, no.
During this bankruptcy, she declared that she only had $400 in her two bank accounts, in that she owed creditors nearly $130,000, not including her home mortgage, that she was behind on. Okay.
Oh, no.
She ended up getting, at the time, she wanted a Chapter 13 plan, which would allow her to pay back what she owed to a bankruptcy trustee each month. At the time, she declared that she was making $4,000 in monthly income, but had just over $3,200 in expenses, and she proposed that she pay her creditors $750 a month for 16 months. The court said that wasn't good enough, so a second plan was submitted where she agreed to pay $1,261 every month, right? In order for her to make these payments, she would actually have to earn more money than she thought was possible.
Oh,
so
that's hard, isn't it?
What do you do? If you're a lawyer and you need to make more money, you take on more cases.
Of course you do. That's right.
So this is very similar. I mean, let's talk about this. This is very similar to Adnan Syed and what we learned on Serial
Yeah.
with his first lawyer, right?
Yeah.
Who was having financial issues and was taking on case after case
Too
after
many
case because she
cases.
had
Yeah.
too many cases. So same
Yeah.
thing's going on with Sandjai Weaver.
Mm.
It's absolutely insane that like stuff like this can happen because
Yeah.
if you're putting too much on your own plate, you're
How
not
do
just
you do your
hurting
job properly?
yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
you're hurting all your clients, the people that
Yeah.
you're entrusted on doing your best job. You can't put your best effort in these cases. And all these cases, you're going to only have one foot in the door,
Mm.
because you have to have the other foot out because there's another case that you have to worry
But
about.
for her, it's sink or swim. I mean, she either takes on more cases and pays things off and saves herself, or she sinks and she
She
is declared bankrupt. And
loses everything.
so exactly, she's basically, understandably, is thinking about herself and her own life,
Yes.
but at the
Yes.
liberty of others. And that's it's
Yeah.
not fair. I understand that it's hard for her, but that's not fair on those clients. She shouldn't be
I mean,
representing them in something as important as that.
I don't know what you do to prevent things like this happening, right? I mean,
Mm,
because as a court, and when you have a court order, you need to make sure that the person can meet these requirements.
yeah.
But at the same time, you have to make sure that their job, especially a criminal lawyer, their job is extremely important to the public. That
Of course, it's
you
someone's
shouldn't
life.
allow
It's yeah.
them to be in a situation where they can overextend themselves, and you can't let them get in over their head. So
No.
how do you
No,
balance
you
that? How do
can't.
you balance someone making a living with ensuring that they are able to provide the services needed to very vulnerable persons?
There needs to be rules in place, doesn't there? That a person can only take on so much.
So during these few meetings that Sanjay Weaver had with CJ,
Mm.
she never gave him any of the case documents that he requested. Instead, she would often bring files from other clients, which suggested that she was, once again, busy with other cases.
Oh, this is not good, is it? This guy is not getting a fair crack of the whip at all.
It is
This is
not.
it's this never right. This is never right.
Yeah. Now, CJ thought that Weaver might have been scheduling multiple meetings in the prison
Yeah.
at that time, leaving little time to actually discuss his trial. He would continue to, give Sanjay Weaver reminders that
Mm,
he needed the documents,
mm.
but she would never send these documents to him, and she would never actually acquire his phone records, which obviously were very important for his
Of
defense.
course, it's alibi.
Yeah. Never received them.
That's really
Never received
bad.
them. Yeah. Very bad. By the time people realized that they didn't have his phone records, it was too late. So it was like 3 years later, and by that point, all of his records had been destroyed. Phone
Oh no,
records.
I was going to
So
say because
they were gone.
he could file, couldn't he? That it was in there's something you can file which is like, and your counsel is not good enough. That there was like
Ineffective,
that
yeah.
you've been misrepresented at court because your attorney hasn't been up to date with everything. But
Yeah.
if they've lost everything, it doesn't
It's
matter
gone.
anymore because you've got no fight to
Mhm.
have. You've got nothing. That's
Exactly.
ridiculous.
Now, it just, I mean, I feel like as we go on, it's just going to get worse and worse, right? We
Oh
learned
no.
then that that Sanjay Weaver never submitted a alibi notice until 7 months after CJ's arrest. So you remember Tyler Linder, he had his lawyer who had
Yeah.
alibi.
Yeah.
They met with police right away
Straight
to give
away.
the statement on his alibi straight away. It took Weaver 7 months to file any alibi notice. Okay. He, in that alibi, once again, she stated that CJ was with Dina Duncan's family in West Philadelphia on the day of the shooting. The problem is when she submitted this alibi notice, she didn't arrange for any alibi witnesses to be interviewed, basically leaving it to the DA's office to set those up if they wished.
This
So
is
she had
complete incompetence, isn't it? It's incompetence for him.
it
Realistically, what should happen, or what should have happened for him, is when this all came out, somebody should have gone,
Yeah.
okay, right, you've been completely misrepresented. Let's just let you go. It's you've served all this time. You'll probably you could there is a chance that you could be innocent, and so unfortunately the courts have messed up on this, and they should now let you go free because they have not given you a decent representation. They've not given you a decent chance. They've not heard all the evidence that there is to hear. You have not had a fair trial. Therefore, unfortunately, due to the courts and their issues, you should now be released because you can't give this guy a fair trial after stuff's been lost. Things haven't been filed properly. People haven't been made aware. Witnesses haven't been gathered. It's completely unfair.
It is absolutely unfair. And so when the DA's office received this alibi notice, while they made notes on it, they didn't follow up with the Duncan family to arrange testimony because they didn't have to. That was not that's not their responsibility. And to be honest, if they were going after CJ Rice as being the person who pulled the trigger, it wouldn't be in their best interest to arrange this testimony.
Of course not.
So the first official statement supporting CJ's alibi came 16 months after the shooting at the time of the trial, which then allowed the prosecution to question its credibility because of
good enough,
Weaver's
is it?
negligence.
It's just not good enough. And that's exactly what it is. It's negligence.
Yeah. They would say, why did it take you 16 months to come forward? Like, why didn't you come forward? Why didn't you make a statement right away?
Yeah.
It is crazy.
It is.
Now, as the trial date started to get closer, the assistant district attorney who was handling this case, his name was Eric Strid. He privately had doubts about the police idea that CJ and Tyler Linder were working together. In an internal memo, it was explained that proving Tyler Linder's involvement would be very tough. Okay.
Right.
Obviously, because there is video evidence.
Yeah.
That he
was not there.
He wasn't there.
Yeah.
But this was a situation where the DA's office decided that they were going to go ahead and they were going to throw it up and let the jury decide. So while they weren't sure about it, they decided, well, let's just put it up and see what happens.
Oh, no.
Which is something that they do sometimes. Which is crazy to me, right? If you're like, I'm unsure about this, and I don't think the police case is strong enough, and I don't think we can win this, but let's go ahead and do it anyway, see what happens.
Why not? Let's just give it a shot. No.
It doesn't seem like the best, practice or the strongest strategy in the case.
No, it doesn't.
Like I said, the video evidence that supported Linder's alibi, once again, it showed him cleaning a building in Northeast Philadelphia to one building in Northeast Philadelphia until 8:45 on the 9-inch shooting. So we know he was actually there, Northeast Philadelphia. We see him on video. After that, he and his mom said that they went to clean another building, but this one did not have security cameras. There was other security footage that showed an SUV that was like his mom's leaving the area at 9:53, but it wasn't clear because the license plate wasn't visible. So they weren't able to say for sure it was her vehicle or not. chances are it was, because it
Yeah, of
made sense.
course.
They said, this is where I am. This is the
Yeah,
time we
this is where we
left.
went.
And then on
Yeah.
the video, here it is, right?
Mm.
Now, the other reason they decided to go forward with Tyler Linder as well is because it's possible that after they left the first building at 8:45, he could have actually gone to the crime scene in South Philadelphia, and the family might be covering for him. So even though we see his mom's SUV where it's supposed to be at that certain time, and even though they said Tyler was with her, they said, well, we didn't see him there. We don't have any
God,
video.
it would take a
So
lot of
it's
pre-planning, wouldn't
possible.
it, for that? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but it's tough, because I think you're right, because I think expecting the jury to believe all of that might be a little too much to ask, right? Despite the uncertainty with the case, the DA's office decided to put both Tyler Linder and CJ Rice on trial. Now, Rice and Linder would end up having their trials together, but they would be represented by different lawyers, which I always find very
Yeah,
weird,
that's
right?
really
When you're trying
stupid.
two different people at the
Yeah.
same time, and they're being represented by two different people, and so you
Mm.
really are doing two cases in one. And I mean, I could see how for a jury that could be very confusing, right? Or it's just like
Mm. And for the
you
prosecution,
got to
it's
keep
hard because you're fighting two attorneys.
yeah, exactly. So, but that's what they decided to do. So they were both on trial together. While the evidence against both men was weak,
Mm.
CJ had the unfortunate situation of he of being reliant
Mm.
solely on the performance of Sandjai Weaver,
Yeah.
right?
I
That's
feel
the
for
big
him.
difference now, right?
It
The
is. Yeah.
representation between these two is stark. It's so different between the two. You have
Yeah.
someone that's being represented the way he should be and has good
Mm.
representation. Then you have someone that's being represented by, at this point, someone I don't even know if they fully comprehend the case and
No, that's
and,
right.
and what where their client stands. Now, while I would love to go into detail about the trial,
Mm.
we don't have enough time for that, right? But
No.
so that you can understand how poorly this trial was handled by Sandjai Weaver, I'm going to
Mm.
give you a few of her highlights or
Okay.
lowlights. I don't know.
Okay.
You can choose if they're highlights or lowlights. Your choice. Now, at a pretrial hearing, the court indicated that prosecutor evidence suggesting that Khalif Ladson had been involved in the September 3rd shooting of CJ Rice was not strong. It would not be admissible in court. Okay. So basically, the police said, okay, Khalif was involved in this September 3rd shooting. And so the shooting on the 25th, Tyler and CJ did it in retaliation for the shooting on the 3rd, right?
Right.
The court said, no, it's not strong. That cannot be a part of the case. You cannot bring that as evidence. It's not going to be admissible. But despite this, Sandjai Weaver inexplicably agreed to a stipulation which allowed this motive evidence to be presented against him.
What?
So the court
Why would you
said,
do that?
not
Why?
not strong enough. It would not be admissible. Then your own attorney says, okay, well, let's
No,
make a
it's fine.
stipulation. Yeah, it's fine. Go ahead. You can present it. Okay.
What?
That's the
Cheers.
moment.
Thanks
This
for
is a
that.
pretrial hearing. That moment, I'd be like, whoa, hold up.
Mm. You're fired.
Something's not right. Yeah. Now, Weaver would also fail to move to decertify the case to juvenile court, even though Rice was a minor who had no prior violent offenses, right? So Tyler Ladson was over the age of 18, so he was going to be
Mm.
tried as an adult.
Yeah.
CJ was a minor. This could have been put to juvenile court if she put forth a motion for it to be. She
Yeah.
failed to do that. So he was being tried as an adult for this crime.
No.
On the very first day of the trial, Weaver would be admonished by Judge Dennis Cohen for arriving in court with unlabeled exhibits and no copies for the bench. Completely unprepared.
This is completely incompetent, the whole thing. She just is not
The whole
competent
thing.
to stand to be overseeing this guy's case. He's not getting a fair
Not
trial at all.
No,
Oh,
absolutely not.
This is terrible.
Weaver never challenged the way the photo arrays were presented during the hospital interview. So she never challenged what was said to these two eyewitnesses prior to the interview. She never challenged the fact that it was obvious that at least one of them had talked about the suspects prior to officially being interviewed by the police. Never challenged it.
It's so weird.
She never brought the fact that Latrice Johnson, the sole eyewitness to place CJ at the scene, did not identify him when initially asked. Okay? Never brought that up.
So
Doubts
strange.
about whether or not Johnson actually had the ability to see the shooters from the porch were never raised. Okay? Now, this is very important. Latrice Johnson had stated that the porch was 20 feet from where the shooters were on the sidewalk, and that her view in the darkness had been aided by a streetlight. However, the distance was actually more than 60 feet from where she stood and where the shooters were on the corner, and there was no streetlight where the shooters had been standing. So, lies, right? So she's lying about how far away they were, and the fact that she was able to see them because there was a streetlight. There was no streetlight. They were more than 60 feet away. In addition, there had been 2 cars parked on the street, which would have obstructed the view of the corner from the porch. There was no way she would have been able to see them, or at least see them clearly on a dark night from where she was standing. That was never brought up. What
did Weaver do right? Let's ask that question. Like, instead of saying like what did she do wrong, what did she do right in this whole thing?
Nothing.
Wow.
She tried to do something right. She called CJ's pediatrician to the witness stand, right? So that he can tell what the condition is.
Okay.
However, she only met with him once in person, that being in the hallway outside the courtroom prior to his testimony, where she did not give him any instructions.
This is just crazy.
Sandjai Weaver would fail to present CJ's medical condition in full. She failed to bring up his hospital illness where he had pneumonia, as well as his weakened muscular state. She did not explore what the stress of exertion might have done to a stapled wound if Rice had in fact started running. Never discussed any of that, never brought it up. The craziest thing about all this, Sandjai Weaver never got a hold of CJ's complete hospital records. If she had, she would have noticed that CJ not only had an incision in his abdomen, but he also had a fractured pelvis.
Oh, okay. So that's going to make it very easy to run. Running with a fractured pelvis is really easy.
He's not running. Fractured pelvis is going to take weeks to recover from. I mean, I'm surprised he was even walking when he was going to the pediatrician's appointment.
Well, the pediatrician's already said he was like hunched over like an old man. So the pediatrician's already mentioned that he's shuffling his feet, which is quite right with a fractured pelvis. So this is just so frustrating.
Absolutely frustrating.
So bad.
Sandjai Weaver would call Dina Duncan to testify in support of CJ's alibi. Okay.
Right.
This is his aunt who he was staying with. But this would be a costly mistake because Dina Duncan wasn't at home at the time of the shooting, which made it seem as though CJ had no alibi at all.
Yeah, that's right.
So in cross-examination, she had to admit, I wasn't even home when the shooting occurred. So she couldn't even say that CJ was home at the time.
So they must have been thinking, like, why the hell have they got you on the stand then if you weren't even there? Like, why are we calling you at all? Because that doesn't make sense.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Now, like I said earlier, Weaver never attempted to retrieve the location data from CJ's phone. Never. There was no attempt.
So stupid.
So she could have had easily verifiable evidence to support his alibi, but she failed to do so.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's really unbelievable. It's really sad because this is a young man's life. He's a young man. I mean, he's not even a man, is he? I mean, he's a juvenile, and he's not getting a fair representation at all.
Not at all. On February 8th, 2013, after 2 days of deliberation, the jury would return a verdict. Tyler Linder would be acquitted on all counts. CJ Rice was found guilty on 4 counts of attempted murder.
I knew it. I knew that was going to happen.
As well as other associated charges. He would be sentenced to 30 to 60 years in prison.
And this is the difference between a decent counsel and an incompetent counsel.
Yes. Absolutely.
Wow.
It's unbelievable.
I'm surprised that this has been. I'm surprised that the courts have allowed this to happen. I'm surprised with all of this. The fact that it was quite clearly so incompetent. I'm surprised that they even let this go like this, because I mean, even that young kid is saying, like, I never spoke to her. I haven't seen her. Witnesses and things like that. I haven't heard from her. I mean, it's not right, is it? It's just not right.
It's not. And I mean, almost to like
Please
twist
tell
the
me.
knife, like after after he was sentenced, the judge, the only thing the judge said to him after being sentenced was, "Good luck, Mr. Rice." It's like, how you twist the knife harder? Why don't you? It's like, you're the judge and you're sitting here and you're seeing what's happening. You've seen how poorly he's being represented. And I mean, the only thing you say is good luck.
Good luck. I mean, please tell me that, like, years down the line, people have looked into this and that he's been given a retrial. Please tell me that.
Okay, so he has, right? So what's really interesting about this case is, you might not be familiar with this person, but our American listeners probably are. So on CNN, one of the anchors is a man named Jake Tapper.
Okay.
His father was actually the pediatrician that looked after CJ.
No way.
Right? Yes. So obviously he knew about the case.
He's got a
vested
interest.
Very involved in it. He very invested interest. So he started talking to CJ Rice and like getting his story and getting all the information. So he absolutely helped out 100% with his case.
Yeah.
So appeals process, has to start almost immediately.
But it would take such a long time.
Yes. It would take almost 5 years. So October 2016, CJ actually had hired a new lawyer by this point.
Good.
In an effort to pursue his appeals.
Good.
Now, his lawyer had hoped to call Sandjai Weaver as a witness,
right,
in his appeal process, but she failed to respond to a subpoena to appear at an evidentiary hearing.
Of course she did.
Yes. Now, CJ's lawyer would eventually learn that Weaver had been suffering with a medical condition that left her physically and cognitively unavailable to provide competent testimony. That was per her daughter. So daughter said she's in bad shape. She can't do this. Mm-hmm. Now, Sandjai Weaver would end up passing away in 2019. So, once again, this is so eerily similar to like Adnan Syed in his case.
It really
right?
is. Yeah,
where
it really is.
Christine Gutierrez passes
away
quickly, shortly after, the trial. And I mean, she's not going to be a help.
No.
Now, while his first attempt to appeal was unsuccessful, CJ's lawyer did make a very important decision during the hearings. You mentioned this earlier, okay? His lawyer actually brought up CJ's ineffective counsel through the state's Post-Conviction Relief Act. So he
Good.
brought up saying, hey, he had ineffective counsel, so that's what
Yep.
we're moving towards.
100%. Yep.
This allowed him to file a federal habeas petition,
Yep.
which would be granted in 2023.
Okay.
The crazy part about this is, had his lawyer not raised the ineffective assistance of counsel claims, he may not have been able to use that as an argument to get his case thrown out. That's because under the Post-Conviction Relief Act, defendants can only raise these claims on their first post-conviction appeal.
Oh,
So
man.
had he not brought these claims during the first conviction appeal,
Yeah.
he would have been in a really, really bad situation.
Yeah. That's crazy, isn't it?
A really bad situation. You wouldn't be able to talk about anything
no.
that Sandjai Weaver had done or had not done.
No,
it would be left just to the facts, right?
Yeah.
Even though I mean, let's be honest, the facts aren't there. There's
no.
I mean, the only reason I think C.J. Rice was convicted was, I'm not saying that she was actively working for the prosecution. She wasn't, but she was helping the prosecution in everything that she did or didn't do.
And then it makes you wonder.
Ended up helping C.J. Rice.
And then it makes you wonder, due to her situation, was there anything going on between, like, was there anything underhand going on so that, it was worth her while to make sure that the prosecution won their case? It makes you wonder, was there anything like that happening? I know that, that's just speculation, but I mean, the way that this has been so badly mishandled, and the fact that she's going to want more work, I mean, acting like that and doing that to your clients surely is not going to give you a good reputation and get you more work. It's just gonna, it's not a good thing, is it? It's crazy.
Look, I'm not a trained lawyer. You're not a trained lawyer.
Nope.
But I guarantee you, either one of us could have done a better job representing C.J. Rice in trial than Sandjai Weaver did.
I think, you're right there. I mean, neither of us are legally trained, but already we're bringing up stuff that we would have looked at. And I just don't understand. Something's going on there. Something's going on there with Weaver. And if you hadn't mentioned about the money worries, I would be questioning what's happening, because it doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. Lawyers don't usually do such a bad job. They don't. It's their livelihood.
No.
They don't do such an awful job. They do it because they're good at what they do. And their job is to, if you're a defense lawyer, is to defend your client, to get them off as a prosecution is there to fight, to prove that that person has done wrong for your client. So I don't understand how this is so badly done, and it's been ignored so much. Something isn't right. Something's not right there.
What I'm interested about, and this actually might be something that I do. So, I have one of my best friends is a judge.
Yes.
As a judge, I it's your courtroom, and you have to, I feel like you have to ensure a fair trial, and that things get moved along, and that,
yes, your job to make sure your courtroom is fair. Yeah,
exactly. And a case like this, what do you do as a judge? Do you stop it and say, wait, something's not right here? This person's not being represented fairly. Do you throw out as a mistrial? So I'd be curious. I want to talk to him.
Yeah, I think you
see
should.
What he would do in his courtroom.
Interested. Yeah, I'd be really interested to see what he says, because you would think fair as the whole reason we have trials, the whole reason we have this is so that they present their cases and that it's fair, that everybody gets a fair trial, no matter what they're accused of. They all get a fair trial. Okay, so if a judge is sitting there and can blatantly see that this isn't fair and that this person is not doing their job properly, and that this young kid, especially as it's a young kid, in such a serious case, and with the implications where this kid could go to prison for a very, very long time, surely the judge could sit there and go, whoa, hang on a minute, this isn't making sense. Let's just stop. I want to speak to you. And I want to, because I don't see why you can't do that. You're the judge. It's your job to make
Yeah.
sure that things are fair and that things are heard in your courtroom. So I'd be really interested to see what your friend
Yeah.
says. I'd be interested to see what he says. You'll have to let
Yeah.
us know.
You know what? Maybe we'll get him on for like Crimpedia Extra, and we can talk about
What a
legal
great
system. And we can talk about
idea.
cases, and we can
Let's
talk about
do that.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get him
Yeah,
on
we'll
for a
definitely do
Crimpedia
that.
Extra
Let's do
episode.
that.
I think that would be really interesting. And yeah, and then if you've got any questions for him that you want us to ask, just send them in to us and we'll ask him. Because that would be very
Yeah, I
interesting
think
to
that'd
hear
be
it from a judge. Yeah, definitely. Let's do that.
100%.
Yeah.
Now, a federal court would grant CJ's habeas petition in
Good.
November
Good.
2023, so just a few months ago.
Yeah.
He would be released on bail in December 2023. At that point, the state of Pennsylvania had 180 days to decide whether to retry CJ on all counts.
Okay.
On March 18th, 2024, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania would dismiss all charges, and CJ
Thank
Rice
goodness.
was exonerated.
But it doesn't give that kid back the years that he spent in prison for, and that he was probably innocent. He was probably completely innocent. I would now, if I was him, I would be seeking legal advice from somebody a bit more trustworthy as to what now compensation he can be given for this complete inadequate representation, and the fact that he's lost so much of his liberty. And I mean, he went to prison as a child. He came out of prison as a man. That changes a person. That really changes a person.
Yeah.
All of your formative years where you're working out who you are, where you're carving your way in the world, have all been taken away from him. And that's very, very unfair. Very unfair.
Okay, so maybe I was a little too hard on Sandjai Weaver, because you asked, did she do anything right? It ends up she did. Okay.
Right, well, what did she do?
So you remember I mentioned that she agreed to allow that motive evidence to go to be included in the trial. Rice's habeas petition was granted on that specific claim, that his trial attorney was incompetent when they agreed to allow that motive evidence at trial.
So, but she didn't do something right on purpose, did she? It was by accident. I mean, I'm sorry if you're her family and you're listening. It must be very hard to have all this pointed out. But when you are in a profession where you are working and on something as important as someone's liberty, you cannot have off days. You cannot be less than 100% on your game. And no matter what is going on in your private life, that is why they get paid the money that they do. I mean, let's face it, they are paid very well. And that's because they've been to university and they've done all the stuff but that's why they are paid well, because they have the knowledge that they have and because they're doing such an important job. You can't be having a bad day when you are representing someone in such a serious case. We're not talking about being told off or being given, a slap on the wrist for stealing sweets. We're talking about attempted murder. It's not good enough. It's not. And if Weaver is part of your family and you're hearing this, and I'm sorry, but you can listen to this and realize that she was not she was not doing a good job.
She was not.
And that's horrible. I feel sorry for her. She's got a lot going on and she's financially worried. That's a huge burden to have on your shoulders, and that's not very nice. And it's hard to concentrate on your job when you're worried, that your house is going to be taken away and you're going to be declared bankrupt. That's awful. But then if that's the case, you can't be putting yourself. You can't do it. You just can't. It's not fair. It's not fair on that person.
Yeah. I do have to give credit to the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. Prior to the federal magistrate judge hearing the appeal, his habeas petition appeal, the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office did a full reinvestigation of the case. Okay,
brilliant. That's really
good. It was It was comprehensive. They examined evidence, including Rice's prison conversations with his families after his arrest, as well as inconsistencies around Rice's hairstyle in the witness identification. Right. So there was
Right.
questions
Okay.
about like
Yeah.
what they said his hair looked like, what his hair actually
Yeah.
looked like.
Actually look like.
The district attorney, after reinvestigating the case, found that it was very murky without clear evidence one way or the other.
Yeah.
Um, he, he stated that it would be a violation of my oath to leave someone sitting in jail on a case that has no integrity.
Yeah. Good. I'm really glad that he did that. I'm really, really glad.
I mean, there's cases like this all the time, right?
Yeah. It's sad, isn't it?
This one, it is. I mean, it's tough because, um, to be honest, like while I was working on this case, there was another case
Mm.
that I came across that I started looking into
Mm.
where, um, with a family, the parents were convinced that their son hadn't, hadn't committed it, and they had valid points and they made a strong case, but then you look at it and to me, it's like he did it, and it's tough
Mm.
because,
Mm.
um, you know, in cases where there is strong evidence against the person who is saying that they are innocent, they didn't commit a crime. It's like, what do you do, right? If the
Mm.
evidence is pointing towards one person and they're
Mm.
found guilty,
It's
that's one
horrible,
thing.
isn't it?
This
Yeah.
is a Yeah, this is a
This
whole
is
nother
different.
case where I feel like this is a person that should never have been charged in the first place. There was no
That's
evidence to
right.
charge them.
No.
It should never have went to trial.
No,
He
you
should
shouldn't have
never have
done.
been represented by who he had been represented by. The case should have at some point been halted and stopped, whatever, thrown a mistrial. And it ultimately was a kid that spent what, 13 years of his life
Mm. Mm.
behind bars for what?
Is there not, like, is there not, I'm sure there should be, or there is, I'm sure there is standards of, like, I'm sure there's standards that you have to hit when you are presenting things in court. I'm sure that you're not just left willy-nilly to just chuck whatever you want in. So I'm really surprised that this actually happens. I'm surprised that there is, like, where she hasn't submitted this on time or she hasn't done this. Well, surely there should be somebody that oversees that says, well, where is this? Where is this? How has this been filed? This should have been filed by the
Right.
21st. Why hasn't it been filed? I'm sure that there's something like that. So how has this all been missed so much? I mean, I'm glad he's out. I'm glad he's out. Even if he did do
Yeah.
it, I am glad he's out because he hasn't had a fair trial. So you can't be sort of, you can't be hard on him on something that he hasn't had a fair trial about. So even if he did do it and we don't know,
Yeah.
then unfortunately that's just part of all of this mess. So I do hope that that's
Mhm.
it for him now. I do hope that he will receive some kind of compensation for the 13 years that he's lost. And I'm sad that Weaver passed away. That's horrible. But I don't think it was a good thing that she would ever be representing anybody else until she sorted out everything, because she's obviously
Yeah.
highly educated because she's doing that job. And obviously her personal circumstances have clouded her judgment, and there's a deprivation of people's liberties to contend with. So
Yeah.
it's very sad, but
And I mean,
what a case,
and I
blimey. What a case.
I I feel really bad for his mom because you think
I
about it.
do.
She has to put
Mm.
some, like, feel like some responsibility because
Because she can't
she
afford to
reached out to
help
someone that
him.
she yeah, well, yeah,
Yeah.
she reached out to this person who thought, okay, well, you know what, I know this person who's a lawyer now, and you know what,
Yeah.
we work together. She's a good person.
She's going to help
This
my
is someone that we
son.
can rely on,
Mm.
and then it all completely just falls apart. You
Yeah.
know,
It's
uh,
horrible.
it is. It really is horrible, but it's thank God that
It
this,
happens a lot, doesn't it?
y yeah, it does, unfortunately. It does.
It does. It's, yeah. And how often do we get to
Oh,
hear
it's
about it? Like,
insane.
truly, how many cases like this do we actually hear the truth about? I bet there's a lot. When you start digging, I bet there's a lot.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's horrible.
Absolutely. It's an unfortunate truth. So
Oh,
that is
thank you.
this week's
Thank
case.
you. That was a very,
You're
very
welcome.
interesting case. And it's really good to be on, to look at it like that and to look at it and see what, I mean, like you say, we always do cases where you have a clear victim, you have a clear perpetrator, or, you're searching for the perpetrator. In this one, it's really interesting to see the injustice and how this was dealt with. So,
Yeah.
that's just, it's
Yeah.
just
You
horrible.
you really inspired me with your Miriam case, and I was like, you know what? There's other things that we need to look at and we need to
Yeah.
discuss, because things like this are important. When you have a mother who
Very.
is hell bent on finding out like what happened to her daughter and
Yeah.
seeking justice, right? That's one thing. Then you have this where you have a person who's faced injustice for so long, and
Mm.
they deserve to have a fair share and
Yeah,
have a
definitely.
fair trial. And
Yeah.
they spent 13 years of their life behind bars for what? For having a really bad lawyer.
It's crazy. Yeah,
It really
it's
is.
really sad. Well, talking of all things that we love to look at and injustice and justice and things like that, we are going to be this year at CrimeCon UK, which is the ultimate true crime event. It's going to be returning to London on the 21st and 22nd of September 2024. Now, it's the UK lead-in true crime event partnered by True Crime, which is the expert-led panel. And this is available on your platform of choice. So wherever you want to look at it, you can find all about true crime. They've got some absolutely brilliant programs. So make sure you do check that out. Now, we will be there. So you can come and join us. You can just use the code CRIMEpedia at checkout and it will give you a special 10% discount. The good thing about this year is that they've changed things a little bit and they are doing day tickets. So if you can't make the whole weekend, you can actually just get a day ticket. You can have a look at the schedule and see which one has got the most of the stuff that you want. And then you can just purchase a day ticket. The other really, really good thing that I'm really excited about, and you will be too, Morgan, is that the dogs are back this year.
The dogs are back. That's wonderful.
The dogs are back, which is brilliant because the dogs weren't there last year and we missed them. They do some fantastic demonstrations, the drug dogs, on finding drugs on unsuspecting people, which is just the way they work is so clever. And they're so cute and you get to scrunch them and give them a good rub and a tickle. And it's really nice. We've got a new venue this year. It's very easy access to all the content creators, which are going to be bang in the middle of the show this year, which is a bit different. So we're not going to be in a separate room. We're going to be sort of like bang in the middle of everything. So you can come and meet your favorite podcasters, not only podcasters, they've also got TV show hosts. We've got documentary makers. There's also YouTubers. There's loads of people. Like Morgan and I get so excited every year to meet all these people that we've seen their shows or we've listened or we've watched or we've seen on YouTube or TikTok or something. There's loads. There's more and more every year. Yeah. There's Colin Sutton, of course. He is like the daddy of true crime, I think. Everybody wants to meet Colin Sutton. Everyone loves that man. I don't think he needs to buy like a drink for the whole weekend because I think he's just constantly handed drinks. Quite rightly so.
Absolutely.
He's a godfather of true crime. So yeah, there's loads. There's a meetup. There's going to be a live podcast. I don't know if people generally know that happens, but quite a lot of the time we do record live episodes from the venue, so you can sit in the audience and be part of the live episode. It's going to be amazing. I love CrimeCon. I love going. I always look forward to it. I've usually got an exam and have to run away, but this year I don't. So it's the first year I think I haven't had an exam to run away to. So yeah, it's going to be really fun. I know, really, really fun. So make sure if you want to get yourself a ticket, just go to the website, crimecon.co.uk, and you can check out all the prices. Stick yourself the discount in because it gets you 10% off, and that's quite a good discount. So just put Crimepedia in, and then you can come and meet us because we'll both be there. So it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it.
It's always a good time.
Always,
I enjoy it.
Always. Me too. Yeah, me too. I have just as much fun in the bar as I do working. Talking about good times. So at the end of each show, as you'll know if you're a regular listener, we like to cheer you up with something that we like to call a dumb criminal.
Hey, dum-dum head, you's a real jackass.
This is brilliant. I love this one. So a policeman responding to a burglary report at a house in Johannesburg sat down on the couch to take a statement, from the owner of the house, not realizing that the burglar was hiding under the sofa. So the homeowner was sat talking to the police officer, looked down and saw the burglar lying flat on his stomach underneath the couch. So half of this burglar is under and half of him is hanging out. His head was right by the policeman's legs. So the policeman jumps off of the sofa, arrests the man, and hands back all the stolen jewelry and the digital camera that he'd stolen from the house. The police were so happy, right? The whole thing was completely bizarre because literally the policeman was like sat on top of the burglar the whole time he's sitting there taking the statement from the homeowner. Like, what are the chances? What, you go and hide under a sofa and the police sit on the sofa that you're hiding under?
Can you imagine the burglar under there? Like, the police officer sits down and like you just hear a
you're sweating. And it was only because the homeowner looked down and was like, what? Hang on, there's a man under my sofa.
Hey, what are you doing there? Unbelievable.
I know. So of all the places,
what's worse, being caught like hiding halfway under a couch or like trying to hide behind a curtain in the corner?
Yeah.
Like,
it's just as bad,
isn't it? Behind the corner.
It's just as bad. So if you're going to be burgling someone's house in future, probably not the best hiding place under the sofa. It's probably not a good idea.
Definitely not. Not at all.
So that's it from us this week. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really happy to be back, and we'll be back with you in a fortnight with one of my episodes, which will be a UK-based episode for all of you overseas that like to listen to what goes on in England. We'll have that for you then. So for now, be nice.
And bye.